Hey guys, so I needed your help. I just needed to talk about something. Mm. As always, what am I doing? I don't know. Oh, yeah, trying to configure the database. So, a database can save information, and what kind of information could we save? Well, some information is just like a to do thing, right? So that's kind of data that doesn't need to be saved forever. So is there a name for that? Maybe like a notice or a flyer or something? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Uh, so a notice, so an alert, so a notice. I mean, alert is now, but a notice is like a note based in time, like an appointment, like a reminder. Anyways, so there's pieces of information that you would set into the database that perhaps you want to look at again, like a notebook. Okay, like a notebook. Uh, okay, so then a notebook, like a sticky, like a post-it. Like, why would you have a post-it? I mean, a post-it attaches to an object, like to a book or to a wall. So why would you use a digital oh post-it? I mean, if you had something okay, so the ability to add a note to some object online, like attached to what? I don't know. So when you come across some object, I mean, if there's a note, if there's a post-it on your fridge, then you come to your fridge and then you see the note that's on your fridge. But in the digital environment, you come to what? You come to, well, you come to an object. Maybe it's an appointment. Maybe it's a piece of data. Okay, so you can attach notes to things, right? So I want to be able to create, I guess, post-its that could attach to reminders or pieces of knowledge or that's just the ability to add information to objects digitally. Okay, so I guess we can say we have post-its and we have like reminders. Those are the time space continuum. So a post-it, so an alert, so a reminder. If you're concerned with a post-it and you're thinking, I'm going to attach this information to something located in space-time. I mean, not to be silly. I mean, like, you know, it would come up when I encounter an object, or when I encounter an object at a point in time, or when a point in time comes. I mean, that's what an alarm clock is. It's a piece of information that comes at a certain space, certain point in time. Okay, so a reminder is kind of a post-it that is linked to a position in time. Okay, so then there's post-its. What else is there? So that's just information that's like you want to be looking at, or like, but like a notebook is like your place where you gather your notes and your thoughts. Maybe you digest it later. Maybe it's an archive. Oh yeah. So archive is kind of like long-term storage. So maybe we could say you got an archive, right? And then you got like a notebook that's like shorter term. I mean, people archive in notebooks, but let's just say if we have to define things that we're going to be creating with certain purpose, we can change the label later, but we have post-its that can pop up, populating data attached to objects in certain spaces, whatever the object is in the database that we're building and the experience that we're showing to people. Also based in time. That's kind of like an alarm clock or like a notice or an alert or something. Okay, I don't want to get into all the nitty gritty bits about when would alerts come up. When you look at something, or when a condition is met, or when some trigger is tripped. Time of which being one of the primary triggers that we'd probably be considering ourselves to think about. So, anyways, you got post-its, okay, and you got like a place to put your thoughts, like a notebook, like a blog, like a blah blah blah, like a blog. Okay, that's like a thing to put place to put your thoughts. So that information can be like accessible to you or to the public or to whatever you choose. You create a group and then that information, like a bulletin board. Okay, so now we got post-its and alerts and reminders and notebooks. And the other thing is This is all information that's kind of external to the brain, right? I know how to drive a car, and all that information is stored in my brain. I don't need to keep it in my phone. It's all packed in there. So all the information that I've spoken to you guys thus far has been related to information that's not necessarily internalized within my own, like, wetware, my like meat, my bucket of meat up here. So what about information that we want to learn? So that's a different category of stuff because we want to be internalizing it. I mean, if you have some information that's in a notebook and you want to learn it, you want to internalize it, and you want to choose later, like, hey, this is something I want to learn, not just stick in my notebook, then you need to be able to like flick a switch and say, hey, please help me learn this thing. We all have stuff that we want to learn and we forget about it and time goes by and we get distracted and we don't keep up with it. But if we have some AI or we have some algorithm that can help us and keep on top of it and have some way to prioritize, because we are not like computers, we have limited time and functions of memory and attention span, then the other category that is separate from all those other things, like a memorandum, an alert, a post-it note, a notebook, a blog, those which are all external, is, well, maybe those are all expressions of information. They're different ways of capturing information. Maybe the point is that, like, we could indicate to the algorithm that, hey, here's a piece of information that I would like to internalize. That's called studying. So never mind about talking about the algorithms of how do you learn, memorize, remember, revise, and review information. We need a way to indicate, hey, algorithm, this is a piece of information that I want to be internalizing. Oh, to what degree? Some information, you could have like a target goal or depth of fluency that you'd like to incorporate into your learning algorithm. For example, like some information I need to know, maybe like I know how to like change like the oil in the car or add oil to the car, check the oil in the car, but probably I don't need to be like great at it. I mean, if you want to study music, then you got to play those scales like, kabillions of times, right? And you got to practice your tone and all your stuff to be able to do something fluently. If you want to be great at math, then you got to be working on making sure that the concepts that you can manipulate in your brain are very fluent and create a very frictionless working sandbox so that you can manipulate your concepts and be good at what you're doing. So then when we want to learn things, do we need to be telling the machine like, hey, how much fluency would we like to pursue? I don't want to talk right now about the capacity component of these things because, if it was a computer talking to a computer, they could just make sure everything's fluent, but we take time to learn and we forget stuff. Yeah, so then if you set priority to an object and say, this is high priority, this is something I want to know, this is my passion, or this is a required slice of knowledge that I need to be learning to a certain depth, maybe you're going to be required to do something with no time limit. Maybe if you're skiing down from a mountain, you don't necessarily need to ski really fast, but if you're going to be signing up for a ski race, you got to learn how to function and turn quickly and stop and all that jazz, right? Okay, so I want to be able to create knowledge or data, and then so the information is created. We have to decide where we want to see it, under which circumstance and which experience online we want to be seeing it. And then also, if we indicate, is there any difference? Maybe it's just one piece of information. Like, a post-it, a calendar. A calendar is just adding the time concept to a post-it. Is there only one thing? Is there more than one thing? I mean, a post-it with a time bearing is like an alarm clock or a reminder. And I mean, what is a post-it? It's just a piece of information that's kind of, presented in a square or something. And if you want to internalize that, then that goes into your learning algorithm bucket. So maybe there's just one piece of information and there's different facets of that piece of information. In terms of the consideration of, okay, is it time bound? Like, is it going to come back to you? Is it like an alarm clock? Is it brought up, or presented as an option to view when you're viewing some piece of content, and how do we build that? What do we want to build? And then also, is this piece of information something that we want to hold, you know, in our brain? If we consider like my mind, if you consider like your mind is kind of like a collection of like offline and like, you know, wet and dry, I don't know what you call it, but you know, stuff that's in here, stuff that I know, and then stuff that's out here. It's still my information. I mean, this is my hoodie, right? I own this hoodie. It's my hoodie. It's not my brain. So I also own information in a notebook, like my auntie's phone number. I haven't memorized it, but I have it, so I can access it. So maybe if there's like an archival nature of information, then I don't have to memorize it. I mean, it would be better if I just remembered everything like my wife does. She was a genius. So, okay. So create a piece of information. So then, does every point of information need to have like this learning algorithm attached to it, like what I made before? Like if you have information that needs to be internalized, so you need a level marking the level of current like fluency assumed by the algorithm, whereas like maybe like level, I don't know, maybe like level 8 is like first encounter of information, and level 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is following the track up to the point where you're assumed to be very fluent. And if you improve, then the level moves up the ladder up to level 1. And when you get up to level 1, the computer very rarely, you know, brings this piece of information around. There's an algorithm on the database that I have that says the frequency to which each piece of information comes up when you are encountering information at a certain level. Anyways, so that's the level, right? So, but that's like, how often is this stuff going to be brought up to you? Like, I'll see you in a day, I'll see this information in 2 days, 3, 5 to 8, 7 days, 2 weeks, a month, like that, right? Well, what about within a training session? I mean, if you're doing like practicing music or practicing, you know, taekwondo or practicing math, perhaps it's important that you take time to work on improving the fluency and executability of that. Is that a word? I don't think so. The executability of that performability. I don't know what you call that. You want to be checking like how internalized that skill is. Like, what's 2 plus 2? Okay, that's 4. I didn't have to hesitate. And can you sing a major 7th? And can you do a backflip? Whatever. So maybe for the taekwondo person, they're like, hey, can you do a backflip? Okay, yes, I can. And then you can be saying like, well, I mean, how fluent is that? Is it like as fluent as you would like it? When you're doing, you know, what's 5 plus 5? Okay, you got it. And do you feel there's any friction in the delivery of that content when somebody says, okay, what's 5 plus 5? And you're like, 10. Okay, you got it, right? But it's not necessarily sufficiently internalized. So then we need some like due date system to say, when are we going to bring this stuff back up based on a repetitive like review structure. Also within the practice session, we need some like indicator of like fluency. Like a either like a subjective rating where I like, okay, this is good or this is bad or needs more review or I don't know or I got it, right? And then also some sort of measurement of fluency that's beyond subjective. So for example, like if they ask, okay, what is I don't know, 9 plus 2, and then it asks you, and then you punch in 9 plus 2 equals, you put the answer in, then the machine could be noting like, how long did it take you to do that? Yeah. And within a set of information, maybe if you have like, you know, 50 questions that you're answering, oh, good idea. Maybe within those 50 pieces of information that you're like answering, you know, we could say, hey, look at the yes, okay, you got it all right, right? So are you done? I mean, if you have a bit more time, we could say, let's look at the 10 questions where you were the slowest and put a star by them. And whereas like, okay, let's say, yes, you got them all right, instead of like graduating all the data points from like a level of fluency from like 4 up to 3, let's say the things that have low fluency, I mean, they're not possible to be executed very quickly, well, let's drop it down to like level 5. So then you're actually going to review that information more quickly. And then also within the practice session, okay, so say the stuff that seems to be coming really quick, what's 1 plus 1? Okay, great. What's 2 plus 2? Great. But what's, 37 times 56? And if you're like, Gah, then the machine can be saying, oh, hey, this thing's not necessarily very fluent. And if this is a data set with several questions, we don't really need to necessarily worry about the ones that are very fluent, right? So let's pare this data set down to like the top 5 hardest things, or the top 10% things that need to have practice. And so that's something to work on. So there's a due date, like when stuff's going to come around, and there's like levels of stuff. So when you have a day that comes up and you have like, you're working on 50 new concepts or X new concepts, then maybe this concept that's coming up today, the last time you saw it was 5 months ago, because you have it quite internalized, right? But maybe another thing that's coming up today is something that you kind of forgot yesterday, and so you're going to see it again today. Okay, so I think that's... And then when you're working on stuff, should you have the idea to realize or register like, hey, this is not a priority for me right now, so deprioritize and like take it off the algorithm, take it off the train, so the machine's not bugging you about it. Yeah, maybe you thought this was a priority, but something else comes up, and then you're like, you deprioritize this data set, right? To say, yeah, I still like this, but let's deprioritize this, or let's make like some sort of emergency priority for like another set that's come up that's really important to you. Okay, so prioritizing data points for internalization. Okay, so data can data has like accessibility, right? And then where within the digital experience do you see it? And are there triggers that actually it's brought to you? Like you don't go and seek it. So you can go and seek the information, right? Or it comes to you based on some triggers of time or, other stuff. Work on that later. Okay. And then maybe you can indicate this is something that I actively want to be working on. Okay. Or maybe you want to say like, oh, you know what, turn this off. I don't want to be actively working on this thing. Stop bugging me about this information. So like what, like throwing this data set to like, purgatory, or like completely flushing the status of this data set to say like, I want to stop learning this right now. So, I mean, if you thought you got a job in Germany and you're like, hey, I got to study German, and then you get a job in France and like, whoa, I got to study French now, right? You might totally ditch. Yeah, okay, so what else do I need to start? So I'm going to go make pieces of knowledge. Okay. Visibility. What else do I need to start? What do I want to make tonight? So information is bound within, it can be bound within like sets, like a group of information. So instead of like telling the machine like, hey, here's a word, here's a word, here's a word, here's a word, here's 50 words that I want to do, telling them each time, you could just say, here, I want to learn this bucket of words. So being able to grab groups or branches of information. Okay, that whole thing about the tree structure, about the prioritizing of like, first learn this, then learn that. Like, let's look at that another time. But that has to fit into the datum, the piece of information, right? Each piece of information can have a structure. I mean, data can sit inside a group, right? But also data can be sequenced, okay? And groups can be sequenced, okay? Okay, I think that's good. Anyways, it's nice to talk to you. Thank you for listening. And it really helps to talk to you guys. It's nice to just have somebody to like bounce ideas off of. So even if nobody ever listens to this, it's good to talk. So whatever you're doing, I hope you're doing good. And I hope that you're pursuing things that you're passionate about. And I'll talk to you again. Thanks so much. Ciao.